SCS writing tips and live Q&A with AZB. First of all, I want to request all of you to kind of relax around the whole thing. Even because I'm asking you because I want to stay relaxed, and I think that will help my mood as well. These are challenging times, especially locally in our country. We are going through a bit of a serious second wave, if you ask me, and that is really not something easy to deal with. I've been stuck in one place for more than a week now, other than a few errands I had to run, and it's driving me literally crazy. And all this work that I get to do remotely is actually what is keeping my mood in a moderated sense. So I hope all of you are also kind of connected to that idea. But other than that, if you are out and about, if your country is quite well and safe with respect to the COVID situation, you are extremely lucky. And I want to humbly even share with you that the more safe you are, the better it will be to yourself, your family, and your country, your fellow countrymen. So I hope that we do that here, and you do that there. On that note, I'd like to get started. So this is a exclusive writing focused session, because ultimately the game with the case study is writing. And if you do the writing well, you will pass. If you do the writing poorly, you will not be able to pass. So it's a very simple game when it comes to that kind of look, that kind of perspective with the case study. This is going to focus specifically on the writing aspect. Yeah, I still have a few people joining. All right, okay. I see a number of familiar names. So hi everyone. Today's plan, I want to start by doing a quick reminder of the essentials. I want to start with a task attempt as well. Then a few key lessons, key takeaways I have ready for you, the main crux of the session. And I do have an announcement that I've been talking about in even my introductory video. In response to a few emails I got asking for support. So you know how this market works, you know how this model works. So with respect to that, I have a couple of announcements that you can subscribe to if you are interested. And then I hope if time permits, I want to look at another task, a second task, and the final Q&A session. That's the plan for today. All right. So firstly, essentials reminders. Many of you would have already watched videos on my YouTube channel. So one of the videos that is quite popular, closing in, I think, around 2,000 views, is the 7 critical tips on writing. So I think these are very important. I want to give you a quick reminder on those 7 tips. Not going to spend a lot of time because I've extensively talked about those in those videos. If you haven't watched them, you can consider reviewing them. Know your role. So you're a senior finance manager in this case for KCTP, which is a science and technology park. Know your core activities. Know the purpose, why you're writing a particular answer. In that, what I'm trying to tell you is that you have to know the requirement well. You have to really understand the requirement to the most basic form of it, because that's how you can write a clear and exact, very precise answer that caters to what the examiner wants. Also, know your audience, to whom you're writing, know the content, which is the plan, know the time, and know the words, what they are asking. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time, again, as I said, on these, but these are critical. If you have any gaps in any of these 7 areas, it means that you're approaching the writing of the answer not fully or not well prepped. So it's important that you cover all these areas. And that is my first essentials reminder. Secondly, I have for you the 5 reasons why students fail. And I have thought about this long and hard before I made this video. If you watch this, it's very extensively detailed also. One of the first things that we notice that students tend to misunderstand the task. This happens all the time. With every session I do, I see this happening, and then you have to fix it. But you cannot fix the problem if you don't know that the problem exists. And knowing if the problem exists is writing. So you have to write and see if you, in some way or form, it could be a language matter. It could be due to a number of reasons. It could be projecting something that you have in your mind, and then you see that in the requirement. Because you, even in general life, when you think about it, and there are several, or and there are situations you come across where you would have done something, or somebody told you something, or somebody sent you a mail, and you did an immediate reaction. And then one day down the line, or another week down the line, or sometimes even 1 hour later, you think back and assume that, oh no, this is not what I should have done. So on a spontaneous moment, you misunderstood whatever that had to be done. And we are talking about the exam, and it's under pressure. You have 1 hour, you've invested a certain amount of money, all of that kicks in, adrenaline is pumping, your heartbeat is big, etc., etc. So you tend to misunderstand the task, and that is not a risk you want to take. Secondly, lack of display of required professional competence. So, professional competence, anyway, you know, this is one of the ethics, right? One of the personal code of ethics in CIMA, that any CIMA member is expected to be professionally competent, but that is also something they expect in the case study, in your answer. So, when a reviewer, when an examiner is marking the answer, the examiner inherently is also looking at or considering the idea if this person, whoever has written the answer, is a professionally competent enough person so that you can graduate from the case study. In fact, they do a second review of it. So this is that theoretical application opportunity of writing, but they do a additional review of it once you apply for your PER, your personal experience requirement based associate membership request. When you make that, you have to go and talk to them. You have to also write about your experience. So they are checking your professional competence. And with respect to the case study itself, what they are looking for is technical knowledge. You have to know your content. You have to know the right things on that are taught in E3, P3, and F3. They are taught not in vain. They are very useful, which means that you have to know them. If you know them, you can take that and apply it to the case study. That is what this means. Third, failure to grasp the overall context and applying it. I've continuously usually stressed this point, saying apply, 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 apply as much as you can. Don't deviate from the context, don't deviate from the situation. Consider that situation and respond to that particular story. Preconceived notions leading to a tunnel vision approach. This is where I kind of advise students not to think too hard and create an image about various unseen scenarios that can come, because you're dealing with multiple variants. And on top of the fact that there could be a small chance that one of the things that you thought is a variant, it might not be the variant that you get, because it's anyway shuffled. So it's a, the variant you receive is a matter of chance end of the day. So because of this, you should be very careful when you try to apply various variants or various possibilities into the paper and walking into the exam with those kind of notions. Because if you have thought long and hard, and if you have imprinted it in your mind, you're going ready to write something, and that might not be what the examiner is looking for. So that is not a risk we need to take. We have to be very open-minded about writing things. Fifth is the failure to present the final written format solution at the required standard. So end of the day, your solution, what you present, you might be very good technically, you might have done the revision, you might have done your mocks, you might have done your personal reviews, you might have gone through the past papers, you might have worked with a tutor, and done the entire process. But end of the day, it's all going to be judged on the final 3 hour work that you do. So you have to be in a, even mentally, right? You have to be in a very good mindset to say that, okay, I'm gonna do a final, the final product I'm gonna put out is going to be excellent. So that is a idea that you have to have, and it also comes with confidence. So always be confident about your ability and carry that to the exam and just do your best. So that's the those are some of the five reasons or the five key reasons why students fail and what we need to avoid. That brings me to another essential reminder, the co-activities. So I know all of you are very familiar, A, B, C, D, E. A is on strategy, B is on ecosystem, C is on financing strategies, D is risk, and E is internal control. And you would have seen, in the strategic case study blueprint or in my introductory sessions or whoever the tutor you're working with, they would have started the session talking about this. There are I can statements. And ideally, when you look at the whole gamut of things, there are about 15 to 20 I can statements. And if you look at the case study, you're going to get, let's say, even if you get 3 subtasks per variant, you're only going to get 9 altogether. And it's usually 7 to 9. It's very unlikely you get 9 subtasks, that is 3 each. You might get 2 each for a couple of them, and then maybe one for one question you might get 3. So on the off chance you get one more, it could be 8. So all in all, one thing I can guarantee is that the questions will be structured in a way that despite the approach of considering the I can statements, you will definitely be tested on all the 5 co-activities. So if you have 7 subtasks, those 7 subtasks will ensure that there is equal weight spread, or approximately equal weight spread across all 5. This also links to your professional competence, because as a business leader, strategic level business leader, the idea is that you should be capable of addressing all these 5 aspects: strategy, ecosystem, financing, risk, and internal control. So remember what the core activities are, um, and that will kind of motivate you to be good in all 5 in a balanced manner and not spend too much time on one or the other. All right. So that's that. Perfect. So first thing that I want to ask is 15 minutes enough to read a task and kind of sketch out and plan what you want to write? Is it enough? Any thoughts? Yeah. All right. So that's actually brilliant. I didn't expect you'll say yes. Obviously, one of the things that makes that process easy here is because you have the reference material, which is the news item, and the case in one window. So in the exam, of course, you can go to the Pearson engine in the study planner and check. It doesn't really work that way. You also might want to refer to the pre-scene, in which case you have a different tab. You have the reference material on a different tab. You have your variant in a different tab, and then you have the writing space. So managing that effectively is very important. Sure, of course. That is usually my recommendation. On that note, so KCTP partnered with a small AI and machine intelligence company which has acquired a tenancy with KCTP. All of KCTP's IT systems have been upgraded. Shireen writes to you about exploiting AI and big data. We collect rather a lot of information about tenants and also especially more on KCTP business services users due to the high engagement levels. With the AI system kicking in, we have more information relating to specific service usage patterns, seasonalities, trends, etc. I had a chat with Bill. Bill thinks we can make better use. I'm also concerned about how we use this. We know that SciPark uses customer information to create partnerships with others. Some clients have disapproved, though. We don't want this kind of concern. We also have many IT service providers who have partnered with us. We have so far not allowed any of these partner organizations to directly engage with any of our tenants and users. Many of these partners have continuously shown interest in the possibility of buying tenant user data from us. There has been some interest shown in the recent board meeting. I have concerns on the ethical side on this. Personally, Shireen, all right. Personally, Shireen believes that a knowledge management system must be used. Sanjay Gupta has forwarded a news alert. Sanjay is frustrated that our financial statements do not show a real picture, planning to meet Sanjay later. What would be the benefits to KCTP of developing a knowledge management strategy? In what ways could KCTP exploit big data analytics as a strategic resource? What are the ethical issues we should consider in relation to allowing partners to use the data? To what extent do our financial statements have limited value to our investors in appraising our performance, and how could we address this? All right, so since you have four questions or four subtasks, it's most likely that you get a 25% portion of your timing to each one of the subtasks. And I would generally, in a proper full-fledged session, I would try and put down a kind of answer set with you, but maybe I'll try to push forward with this, and then if we have time we can try that option out with the second task I'm hoping to try today. First things first, co-activities. So one of the things that I usually recommend is that when you read a subtask, try and figure out what co-activity they're trying to uh, test from you. But look, this is the thing, it doesn't have to be perfect. And if you have done your past paper analysis properly, you would know by now that it's not always easy to do it. There are especially some questions where it's very difficult because from the outset, from the language, the way it's written, you think it's about risk, but truthfully, it's about the ecosystem. So there can be tricky questions. So it's not an exact science and it doesn't have to always be perfect. But when you read a question, having a rough idea that this is where they're trying to test will give you some sort of, you know, direction, some sort of guidance to say, okay, this is the kind of thing that they are expecting us to touch on. So here I've come up with the core activities for you. The first one is on strategy. Second one is on ecosystem. Third one is also on ecosystem. Fourth one is also on ecosystem. And that now why I would say that the ethical issues are related to the ecosystem is because we are talking about specific stakeholders. And whenever a question starts to talk about stakeholders, and we have to think about, to answer that question, we have to think about who exactly are the stakeholders related to this and how would they think, how would they respond. That kind of situation, it's always about the second co-activity, which is organizational ecosystem. On that note, if we think about a rough answer plan, now I'd like to move on to the key takeaways today of the writing tips session, and I'll take these questions maybe after this segment. Takeaway number one. So one of the things that I engage a lot with is marking answers, right? Marking of the mainly my batch, and over the years, you know, having worked with tens and hundreds of students and having marked so many, especially with the case study, this is one issue that we continuously see in answers. The answer lacking clarity. The answer is not clear. Uh, to address this, use simple and clear headings, use subheadings, write simple and short sentences, use paragraphs and para breaks. And if you use a good combination of all of this, right? Simple and clear headings, a lot of subheadings, and a good place to learn this or see how these are being used is actually to look at examiner answers, the way they've written. So why they write it that way is because they try to set a certain expectation that this is how you can write. Not that it has to be exactly that model, but you can learn a few things from that. So if I quote the examiner, these are direct quotes from the CIMA examiner. The examiner says, plan your answers during the exam and pay close attention to timings. It is very helpful when constructing your answer that it has a logical structure. The strategic case study often asks you to justify your answer. Typing an outline answer plan at the start of each task or subtask will help you to plan the structure and reduce the risk of forgetting any good points. Yes? And furthermore, if you look at them pressing, examiner is pressing us more and more to focus on this. Focus on clarity for the reader. You have to think about who is going to read it. Look at previous marking schemes. Marks are awarded based on the content of your answer, so don't spend too much on the formatting and the presentation of your work. Use the word processing tools available wisely to help you structure your response in a way that demonstrates your understanding and application of the scenario. So the examiner is clearly telling us that at the strategic level, given that you are supposed to show professional competence as a strategic level member of a company, what you're writing to someone has to be clear, which means there has to be a logical structure and abrupt. There are so many mistakes I can quote, like, for example, finishing paragraphs suddenly, half written sentences, lack of use of subheadings, overly lengthy paragraphs where you can break, and paragraphs that have a lot of filler words because you're trying to fill the space by writing something in your mind that takes the story away from what is supposed to be written. All of these and many more can cause a lack of clarity. So the examiner is telling you these are the tools that you have, the most basic tools, and you can effectively use these tools to write a good answer. Headings, subheadings, simple sentences, lot of para breaks, short paragraphs, short sentences also. Not sometimes I see 30-word sentences. The sentence is going further and further and further and further. And then you lose the essence of the sentence midway. So all of those are issues that you can address. That's takeaway number one. Number two is too much of what you know. Why I call it too much of what you know is when you get comfortable with an idea you're trying to put down, when you start writing an answer or a paragraph, you tend to write more of what you think or what you feel very comfortable with about you, what you know. And this can lead to several issues. You might deviate from the requirement. You might deviate from the requirement. You might lose the core essence of what the answer must include because you're writing too much of what you know rather than what must be written. Writing theory that is irrelevant to the context of the situation, because you might have started and it might actually be warranted that mentioning something like, let's say, Modigliani Miller's theory, you mention that, and then that's it. That's all you need to write there. But since you're very savvy with that, since you've studied hard on Modigliani Miller, you start writing an additional sentence, another sentence. Okay, I'll write 3 sentences. Now you've deviated and you've written theory that is irrelevant to that particular scenario, particular problem. Don't let that happen. And the context not taken fully into consideration, as a result, failing to reflect the scenario or the specifics of the unseen in the answer. So if I quote the examiner, what is the examiner telling us? It should be stressed that the SCS continues to be a test of candidates' ability to deal with strategic challenges in a realistic context. Candidates should accept that much of the technical content in the syllabus require professional judgment in its application. So pay attention to this. For example, the EMH may be a helpful basis for explaining share price movements, efficient market hypothesis, to a shareholder or a director. But it is unlikely that a detailed description of the differences between weak, semi-strong, strong, etc. will be of much interest to a decision maker. Answers that scored few marks comprise technical content with little or no application to the context. This is one of the most common problems the examiner cites. So don't let that happen. Don't always be on a neutral standpoint, right? Don't think too hard about what you know and don't get too comfortable. Also, don't feel too negative about what you don't know. They're looking for a balance. They're asking you to be balanced and they're asking you to focus on the situation, on the problem. So focus on that. I have seen plenty of students who are relatively experienced. So they have worked in companies. So they bring that experience when they write, and they are not the most technically savvy with respect to the revision content. In that sense, I have seen students who have gone to the paper, done it, passed it, and moved on. So that is when you have a balanced view and a good level of confidence because of that. So don't deviate too much on the scale. Stay on a balanced path. Always focus on the context and give the examiner what they want. That is three. Sorry, takeaway two. The third and the final one is the strategic expectation. Now, the general expectation in the exam is, pay attention to this, for truly advisory to director level writing. So imagine this in a company, if a director is writing to you, asking for advice, asking for a recommendation, it means you are advising the director. You're telling the director that this is the issue, or this could happen, or this might be a good way to go. That is a really remarkable place to be in, no? If a director is asking you, which is synonymous with the strategic level of CIMA. This is achieved by level-based marking. So when you write to a director, there is an expectation to say what you write has to be at the director level. Now, I remember when I started my career, I was working for a large corporate. And this was my relatively early days. And then I went there and I was working with my supervisor. We were working on a certain project. And then I asked a question about profitability, right? About profitability. And I was just an executive of the company. And then when I asked it, my supervisor said, this is not your department. You are too junior for this question. This product has already been approved from the board level. So worrying about profitability of the product and using that to judge whether the product is important or not, that is not up to you. You just do your job. That's what he said. Late, and it really struck a chord with me because I was teaching management, and then I realized that, okay, fine, this is how things work in the company. Because if you're at a certain level, then you're supposed to do certain things. You can think, but you can't raise those, and you might not be in a position to make decisions. That is not the level we are here. We are at the strategic level. Here, a director might actually make a decision based on what you're saying, because the director is writing to you. That is what you need to use, which is later, when I moved further in my corporate ladder, I realized, because as I became closer to the director level, then you're making decisions. You're really thinking about strategic things about profitability, whether this product will work, whether this service will work, how do you really do this, how do you launch it, what are the markets, etc., etc. How does CIMA achieve this? Through level-based marking. Ideas and arguments being made without clear justifications or reasoning. When an argument for or against is made, it is important to say why. Given that even in a company, if you're advising a senior member, they would require your reasoning to understand the full view and thereby consider all thoughts prior to making a decision. Now, this is where the most important thing happens, because a lot of MCS level answers that I see are answers that are very straightforward and that don't really consider the strategic implication of things. So if you're writing about benefits of a knowledge management system, if you ask that same question from an MCS student, there might be 5 benefits. They'll say, dung, 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 right? You have 5 benefits, sure. And maybe one sentence that explains it. That doesn't work here. Here, you're writing to a board member. And if you're saying a benefit is a benefit, there could be 20 benefits, but you have to very precisely say, these are the 3 benefits that I think justifies us launching a knowledge management system, us investing in something. There are decisions being made. So your reasons must be strategic. And this is the evidence from the examiner. If the answer is of high quality, strategic level, and convincingly meets the requirements of the level, then you should award the highest mark available. If not, then you should award a lower mark within the range available, making a judgment on the overall quality of the answer in relation to the level descriptor. So this is an extract, and you would have already seen it. When you write an answer, you also must think to yourself, the answer I wrote, would it be a level 1 answer or a level 2 answer or a level 3 answer? Because if you have written something that really is at the strategic level, something that a board member will listen to and consider and make decisions through, then you've given a level 3 answer and you will merit almost all the marks, if not all the marks. That is where we want to be. So always, I've highlighted this in, I think, every video I've talked about. I always press for this. I am always pushing you to write the strategic level answer. So think big, think strategic level, think what can happen. Like, think like in your family, when you're at home, say, imagine, did, like, when you're 10 years old, the things that bothered you are very different to what your father is bothered by, right? So you might be the 10-year-old kid or the 20-year-old kid who doesn't really care much for how the home is run, how food is put on the table, but those are the strategic matters. So when you want, let's say, 1 million rupees, when you're 20 years old, you go and you ask your dad, can you give me 1 million? But then for your father to give it to you, the father has to think twice, thrice, 4 times, because there are so many things that are playing out in his mind. So we don't want to be at that 20-year-old level. We want to be at the father's level, thinking about the strategic matters about how am I going to give 1 million to this kid and why should I give it? And what is that kid going to do with it? Those are the strategic level thinkings that could happen. I hope that analogy really clears it out for you. And those are the 3 key takeaways I have for you, which I hope, which I absolutely am sure will help you put down a good, excellent answer for the case study in the upcoming attempt that you're going to do. So the time is 5:25. All right. I don't think we have time to try this, no? I promised you 1 hour. I've taken about 1.5. Let me know if you would like to try a task. I might also have the level descriptors to show you what level you can write for that. Having said that, let me take a few questions also. So we have one question: what's a good formulaic method? Can you use okay? What's a good formulaic method? Can you use, describe, discuss, and justify per point with an example? So this kind of illustration will take some time for us to do, but there is really one thing I want to say is, because you're using the word formulaic, one thing I want to make very clear is there is really no science or particular formula behind the way you write it. All in all, the basic formula I can give you is read the question, understand it, like really understand it. Read it until you understand it. If you don't understand it, read it again. Read and read and read. Read it until you get it finally. And then you can plan an answer, sketch out. And that plan, see, the thing about formulas is, if I have 40 members here, all 40 of you will do very unique jobs. And all 40 of you can pass. So there is a certain risk in forcing a formula on you, and it doesn't really work that way. So the best advice I can give you is, all right, so there is actually no power. Yeah, I hope the power comes back. Uh, I hope you can see me also. And let me. All right. So the advice I can give you is with respect to that um, is try writing, like properly sketch out answer plans. Do a few of those. You will find your own rhythm of how you sketch out an answer and continue applying that. That is the best advice I can give you. Don't try to force it into a formula. Um, all right. So let's say that this is the final segment of the Q&A. I have a few questions coming in. Um, so the power is back. How do we attempt questions where we do not understand the technical aspect? Do you have an example? Like, say, the case study, the strategic case study is the best place for you to face this kind of problem, Gabriel, for you to face this kind of problem very successfully, very easily, because it's not a theory paper. Okay. So there will be a problem most of the time. And most of the time, there are problems to solve. So if you practically solve that, let's say, for example, in the earlier question I showed to you, we did 19. Is it? Yes. Let's say that you don't know about knowledge management, right? Knowledge management strategy. What you can think about is, now, say, for example, if I haven't studied E3, I might have missed this. Now I'm thinking, okay, knowledge management strategy, I never saw it anywhere. Then I'm thinking, okay, knowledge management strategy, right? So it's knowledge management. So it's something to do with managing our knowledge. What will happen if I manage our knowledge? Sure. Now I have a better phrasing of that question. So it's one thing that I want to assure you. Even if you give me an example, I can show you how to practically approach it and practically solve it. And let me remind this to you. We are not targeting 80, we are not targeting 150 out of 150. We are simply targeting an 80 score. So if you get 80, you're good. You've done your job. So there is, if it's 150, you have 70 marks to lose. So rather than looking at it from the perspective of getting 80, you can think of it like, my goodness, I have 70 to lose. So there can be a 10 there. That is the gap of that technical knowledge. And that is perfectly all right. The concern here is, will you let it affect your confidence when you're facing the paper? If that happens, now you're in a bad place. You can't even type at the pace you usually type. So don't get agitated, even if you come across a situation, because there are 7 subtasks and all the 7 are going to be practical. I guarantee that to you. So even within one subtask, there is a technical content that you might not know in what you write. If you write 500 words, you can write 300 because you don't know the 200 that you would write about the technical stuff. But the 300 will give you enough marks if you have properly faced that issue, strategically solved it, and given what the examiner wanted, following the proper discipline. The answer is clear, it's very professional. You've brought in some of your real life experience to it. You've really given the examiner what they want. The examiner is reading it and thinking, okay, this answer, this student clearly doesn't have a great idea about this technical area, but despite that has handled it really well. That is a strategic level skill of dealing with uh, limited intelligence but facing a problem effectively. So that is my advice there. Don't get agitated if it's really a technical gap that you see. It doesn't matter, you can pass. um, but other than that, I would definitely add to say, if you, by technical aspect you mean, I hope you mean uh, the idea that, revision, not theory. Now we are on the 8th of November, so the exams are coming up in maybe nearly 3 weeks, right? Maybe about 15, 18 days. So there is sufficient content that you can quickly browse through. You can quickly review. So you will know about everything that you're supposed to know relatively well. And if you take a past paper variant, and if you go through a variant, and if you can tell me one variant where all of the questions were impossible for you to try, then I would yield this argument that you cannot pass. But other than that, that is not the case. You can pass, and so you will pass because you only have to get 80 end of the day. Um, Okay, how many points we should write for each subtask, or 1 point for 1 mark? How many points we should write? Okay, first thing, it depends on the weightage. So first look at the weightage. There are questions ranging from 70% to 50% to 30% to 25%. So you wouldn't write, and the weightage doesn't give you an indication to how many points to write. It tells you how much time is there. So if it's a 25% task, then you have 10 minutes if you allocate 20 to plan and write. If it's a 50% task, you have 20 minutes. Now the question comes, okay, let's assume it's a 50% weightage task. So it means you have 20 minutes. Now you tell me, in 20 minutes, how many points can you write? Let's say it's an evaluation question, which means you can approach it using a benefits versus risk weightage approach. So you're writing benefits, you're writing risks. You have 20 minutes, which means 10 minutes for benefits, 10 minutes for risks. Under benefits, how many would you write within 10 minutes? I would write very strategic ones. I'll carefully think about what I want to write, and I would write maybe 4, but properly strategically imply that. Or you can write 5. That would be a decent number to score the full marks. For a 50% task, if you've written 8 to 10 points, 4 to 5 under benefits, 4 to 5 under risks, you're good. If all those points are quite valid, and if your writing addresses the discipline they expect, you pass the paper, no doubt about it. All right, so computer-based exams. Simple tips: practice typing, definitely, please. Allocate not 3 hours but 4 hours for the paper. So you have 1 hour beforehand to prep and relax around the whole thing. They help you set up, etc. Practice typing. You have to practice your typing. Those are the key aspects. Other than that, everything else is common to your writing. You know, whether you write a paper based, the prep aspect is the same, but the typing aspect is going to be new to you. So you have to practice typing. Start by typing something by looking at a passage. Type and see how many words you write in 1 minute. If you are at about 10 words, 15 words, that's not a good speed at all. We would want to push it to about 25 to 30 at least to start with. I hope that clears that. How do we know how much time to allocate to which part of the question? Say the question has 3 requirements. If we allocate too much to the highest weightage question, we might lose. No, the weightage is the indicator. The weightage is what gives you, or what tells you. Shall I show you? Let's say, for example, all right. So here we have, okay. So you have the paper, and here you go. Now you have the questions, you know the weightage. Now you're thinking, okay, your question was, how do we know how much time to allocate? to which part of the question. So here, you know, part A 60%, part B 40%. No doubt about it. So obviously more time for part A, lesser time relatively to part A for part B. So if you have, let's say, 100 minutes, 60 minutes will be for part A and 40 minutes will be for part B. That is how it works. That is why the examiner tells you, because more marks are allocated for part A because the weightage is higher. And look at their heading, percentage of time to spend on each subtask. So if you go to the subtask, even within the subtask, they tell you identify and explain the interests of the key stakeholders. Sure, subtask A, 60%. So 60% of time here. Evaluate the CEO's proposal that the 4 directors should collectively own and manage the risk of users. Subtask B, 40%. Right? Yes, absolutely. This is the paper. This is how it looks. You will see this, and when you go to your question, they will repeat it here in the task. You will see it there also. It's there for you to see and decide. Absolutely. Perfect. Are we to write answers in email reply format with greeting and signature? Okay, so greeting and signature would be redundant, but maybe when you finish it, a thank you, a simple thank you, senior finance manager, that is more than enough. I need you to draft a paper. Sometimes you get to draft a paper. Passes your document. They're quite straightforward in what they want. So you can keep it in simple form. Here you have your window. You can bold, italic, and underline. I would mostly just use bold and underline. Carefully choose italic when you want to use that feature, but keep it quite simple. All right, we have, okay. And there were a couple of other questions that came to me over email as well. One question was, let's say that okay, so okay, I'll take one from the chat. Is it necessary to relate our answer to the additional info provided by the question? Absolutely. So that is what I mean by context, the context of the question, the story, the situation. So you have, I mean, that is your primary goal, dealing with that situation. So they're giving you a situation to paint a bigger picture around that situation. They give you a reference material. It could be a newspaper article. It could be a letter. It could be another email. It could be a board meeting minute extract. It could be another extract of a report or a journal. It could be anything. And that paints a bigger picture. It gives you more story, more details about the story that you're facing in that particular situation. So that is where you have to stand in. And you're in that situation. Now you're dealing with that situation. So it's absolutely centered and grounded on that situation that you have in the unseen, in that in the paper or the question that you get. So you have to write it from that point. You can't write it like a third person who is looking at that situation. You have to write it like someone, the director is actually writing to you and you're trying to face that. Okay. Do we lose marks for wrong format? For example, if it says report and we just use an no, lose marks. Now, if you ask me if you will get penalized, no, CIMA doesn't penalize you. But if you were to, because writing and there's another question, what's the difference in writing a report or a paper versus replying an email type answer? But isn't the answer in the question itself? Because writing a report is very different to writing an email. So a report, when you write a report, it will be impassive, it will not be directed, it will be written in a language that is unique to a very independent form of thought. So you're writing as a report. It's very different to when you're writing an email to someone, telling them what they want to hear or telling them what they asked you about. So that exactly signifies the difference between writing a report and writing an email. Um, So, do we lose marks for wrong format? Not really. It won't be a major factor. End of the day, whether it's an email. So, if you're writing an email, let's say, okay, fine. So, if you're writing an email, you would say to CEO from, let's say, SFM. Sure, right? If you want, you write the date also. Okay. Dear, our CEO is Sanjay. And then you start writing your answer, right? You can have headings, you can have subheadings. Don't like try this on Word when you're trying it, or whatever exam platform or whoever you're working with. Simple Word template is what you should be using. Report, okay. Report to, from, as a report, the only additional thing I see is subject. You might write a heading to a report. So there might be a subject, and then directly heading 1. You're writing your answer. You're good. So report versus.
I know from that. What loud? Huh?
Right? Clear? So with respect to the content that you write within, there might be language differences. You might be addressing someone, and most of the time, if it's an email, the question itself will be like that person is looking for advice or a recommendation. So you will write it in that tone. If it's a report, it's more of an informing tool where that person is hoping to learn about something by reading your report. So the language that you write, the tone that you write will be slightly different. Other than that, this is what you will have to, or you can follow. Keep it very simple. If I pay your attention, if I take your attention to mock or take away 1, simple and clear headings, subheadings, simple and short sentences, paragraphs and parabricks. Good, use a good mix of this. The beginning and the end will not be used to penalize you if you have written good answers, if you have given them what they want. So don't worry about that. So we have a theory question, earnings based valuation in company valuation. Earnings based. It's actually simple when you think about it. Let's say there's company X and it has historical earnings. And based on that, you can use historical EPS. And the historical value of the company can be considered as a multiple of the EPS. So EPS is the earnings. No, let's say a company is earning $10 per share, and historically the market cap, or you deem the value to be 100, or let's say 200, then now your multiple is 2. Now what you do is you project the future based on historical values. You project the future EPS. You estimate, you use an estimated multiple. So obviously your prediction of future EPS will be based on your historical numbers. Your multiple will be based on the historical multiples. So you might say, okay, historically we've made 10, we're going to make 12 next year. The multiple, it has been 2, but since the market is good and we've been growing, I'm going to say 2.2. So my earnings based value, I can keep it at 20. So I can say 22 is 264 million. So it's this simple idea that your company's value is a multiple of your estimated earnings, a multiple. In single, you would call it gunakarya. So you estimate your historical multiple and apply it to the future EPS that you project by various means, revenue drivers, cost drivers, etc., and PV analysis. Multiply it, get the earnings based company value. Now, uh, as you can see, you need a EPS to do this, which means there has to be shares in issue, which means it has to be a public company. So if it's not a public company, it's very difficult to have an EPS. That is why then you have to go for a proxy company if it's a private company. So there are other technical deviations from this, but a simple summarization of earnings based would be this, how it works. At this point with this session, that's what I'm hoping to achieve. But that's what I can discuss within this scope, Rukshanti. KCTP has a director who is used to work for a major shareholder. Sure. How does this affect corporate governance? So it doesn't, there is no rule in corporate governance to say that you can't have, because the director is non-executive and is seemingly not independent because the director represents CCU interests. It might actually be a good thing, and shareholders actually have a right to appoint a director that they deem to be working in their best interest. So corporate governance wise, imagine your CCU and you own 20% of the company, and you have, other than Professor Helga, you have no interest or you have nobody inside the company. So having Professor Helga is a good thing because you own the shares 20%, and you want someone to be in there and pay attention to what is happening so that your investment and your money and what is being done with your money will be managed well. So in that sense, with respect to corporate governance, we don't see a major issue unless there is a unseen situation that creates a direct conflict of interest. Maybe we are doing things that are only helpful to CC, then we have a problem, and this director's involvement can be an issue as well, because end of the day, the director also has to, like in a general sense, the director's responsibility is to work on behalf of all shareholders. So if 20% interests are being overly taken care of without the other 80% or disregarding the 80%, we have a problem there. Is earnings based valuation method and dividend based method the same? No. So dividend based would ideally fall under net cash flow or DCF technique, where you assume that your company's value is the sum of the present sum, today's sum of all the future dividends you're going to pay, assuming that you're going to pay the whole earnings of your company as dividends. So there are similarities, but it doesn't work on the multiple model. It works on a more present value based model. Yeah, so agency issue is general. Agency issue is always there. It's not an issue, it's a theory that directors are shareholders, agents, and it is their fiduciary duty to do things in the best interest of shareholders. It's always going to be there. Any director deviating from that mandate is doing something that creates a agency principle problem. So that is a completely, fully, all the time, 24 hours, 365 days existent matter, agency theory. All right. So we have, okay, I wanted to answer another question that I got over email also. Okay. Let's say that technology park has a tenant coming in that involved in the pharmaceutical segment. They're keen to conduct research on the vaccine of COVID-19. So that's a good thing, I would say. Would KCTP allow this tenant? Sure. Higher the risk, higher the return? Sure. Is KCTP well equipped and ready to accept this tenant? Sure. Or maybe this will be a new avenue for KCTP for new investment. See, all these are possibilities, no? So this is a potential scenario that you could face. Can we consider that as a strategic plan? Sure. Like all your questions, would KCTP allow this tenant to rent? Now the unseen is not going to purely be this short. It's going to give you a lot of details. There could be a newspaper article also about this kind of thing. Based on all that, you can decide whether like without that background, without the context, I can't say, or you can't say that whether you would allow or not. We don't know about the tenant. Is the tenant ethical? Is the tenant a good tenant? Is the tenant in the long term best interests of the company? Does the tenant adhere to our health and safety requirements? Whether it's COVID-19 or whatever, is this tenant going to listen to us and sign our agreement, give us the deposit? All of these things have to be considered. So the situation will inform you on how to answer that. Then, is KCTP well equipped and ready to accept this tenant? So far, I don't see an issue, given that even CCU is a biotech player, and CCU was our founder, so we might have a more tendency to biotech also. And as such, I don't really see a major issue. We are the largest science and technology park. Why wouldn't we be well equipped, unless the unseen, that question tells you that there is something wrong. Um, Maybe this will be a new avenue for KCTP for new investment. Agreed, sure, maybe. You have to read the unseen properly and decide that. Jumping into a COVID-19 vaccine project, can we consider that as a strategic plan? So again, strategy. We are a tenancy business. If someone wants to come and do research in us, I wouldn't. That is the normal way how the business operates. So it's a tenant interested. We will review them. We do our pre-employment checks, etc., etc. We have our own thing. We have a heavy-duty financial review of the whoever potential tenant. We want our deposit. All these are good. You come, you do your research. If it's COVID-19 vaccine, even better. Sure, do it. Find the vaccine. Will you can sell it. It's fine. So you're a tenant, and you have to manage it, or you have to look at it from that perspective. So can we discuss this as a strategic plan? It has to be something that changes the dynamics of your business. So not really a strategic plan. I'm just seeing with what you have written, I'm just seeing a tenancy opportunity here. There might be reputational benefits, if at all, given that if maybe we could discount the tenancy to say because you're doing COVID-19. But be careful with COVID-19 situations or projections. I wouldn't go too far assuming. This is why 5 reasons why students fail. I'm very careful. I always advise you to make sure that you don't think too hard and imprint images of the unseen into your mind. Be very careful of that. I'm sometimes getting losing track. Cannot divide the time where to focus for E3, P3, F3. If you don't mind, would you share on what key areas to focus in those 3 papers? And if you don't mind, would you do the mapping for the ICANN statements? Yeah, so these are all, look, so if you ask me if there's a mapping, yes, there is a mapping, and I mean, the mapping can get very complicated for you. Like as a student, I wouldn't really go into that level of detail, and it would be too technical and unnecessary. So don't really think of it that way. What you can do is, now if you ask me, okay, will we get to do a complete NPV calculation? No, you won't, because there's no time. And it's a strategic level decision. So you would have other people doing it. So if at all, you would have an NPV calculation done for your review, and you have to look at it and decide whether it's right or wrong, or how would you go about it. So with respect to E3, P3, F3, you have to know, like I refuse to do that. Usually, even when my students directly ask me, can you pinpoint? No. So my revision content that I showed to you, I pitched to you, is under consideration of this. Everything that is related, that is in the F3 syllabus, but also everything that is essential for F3 is considered and covered. So that is one way I solve that problem for anyone who engages with me. That is what I can tell you. You have to be very careful. You have to know. You have to have a fair competence level with all the areas, all the relevant areas. So that is the answer for both these questions in tandem. Let's see. What is the relevance of quantum computer and 3D printing technology? Cyber implication. Okay, so these are very broad questions. Relevancy of quantum computer, we might, I mean, it could be anything, it could be that we want to offer these services. We might have tenants who are working on these models, who are doing this kind of work, etc., etc. Cyber implication, so many ways. So these kind of theoretical aspects, we can talk about technique. Theoretical aspect, we don't have the time, Segun, to go into detail. I suggest you work with as many scenarios, mock exams, etc., etc., to address this. Good thinking, and keep it up. Is there a CIMA, a preferred way of responding to a catastrophic incident? No, there is no preferred way. Every incident is unique, and you read the unseen. I myself, if you look at all the videos that I've done and this session, I've given you everything you need in sense of technique. So you apply the right technique, you address the situation. If it's because catastrophes are different, earthquake is different, tenants pulling out is different, tenants not paying is different, fire in a building is different. Each catastrophe will require specific methods to deal with. Why is Jules sitting on the audit committee? So Jules can sit in the audit committee, but definitely not chair it, right? And we would frown. Yes, I understand. We would frown upon the fact that the chairman is in the committee itself, but it could be also something you would have noted, that the audit committee has to have someone financial with financial expertise, and something that we discussed yesterday also in my session is that Jules is the only one who has that currently. So maybe we're biding our time, and Jules is the one who is bringing that expertise, and it's always important to have someone. So those could be the justifications, the arguments for why Jules is sitting in the committee, hopefully not chairing it. Okay, well, two things I noticed in the pre-scene that were not touched on by anyone on YouTube. One, premises of KCTP is quite huge. It's very limited companies. Sparks are mostly, almost all are private science parks in real life. How do we know if this beta is actually acceptable as per the industry? Yeah, so these are all speculations. I know these are valid questions, valid thoughts. But the first question is that it's huge. So we might be, probably for now, maybe Advilent doesn't have so many businesses, or we might be doing decently okay because we are a revenue generating and profitable business. So we seem to be doing well. We don't know the rates we are charging. And we might be doing very specialized work. So there's little picture on why we are charging premium, if at all that will be coming from the unseen. So as for the 320,000 square meters, and we only have 18 buildings, maybe the buildings are really big, and maybe the tenants who are using are really using up all the space. So it could be a number of reasons. Keep an open mind about that. The unseen will inform you about that. Another thing is that the beta is quite low, and yes, almost all science parks are privately owned or government backed, right, or commission backed. So in that sense, and mostly most universities also have their own affiliated science parks. So it's very difficult to get a market view on this. But what the beta tells us is that relatively to the market, our company and its financial predicament is low risk. And with a rental income business, I would say that is something that logically works also, because you have the deposit, and there you have certain implications of security, secures your approach of how things work and how you do your business. This is why a lot of property owners make good money and are quite happy. So in that sense, I would say relatively to the market, especially in that space, it could be considered that a zero point 0.9 beta is valid, but that's all we can speculate. Beyond that, the beyond that, the unseen will have to give you the picture to say what is going on. You'll have to take that information and apply it. I meant, like, is there a data breach and news is going public? How should we respond to the situation? There will be a right way of responding, was what I asked. Yes, absolutely. There is always a way to deal with. So this is in terms of PR, right? public relations campaign, how you're going to inform the public, send the information out, etc. So even I think, I suppose I must definitely thank all of you for joining the session. It's something that I do out of my passion, and also a way for me to really get my work out there to build the awareness around the way we work. But you know how I am with my YouTube content, and I'm quite like I'm not overly protective, and I share content in a systemic and holistic way that usually helps you. And if you look at all that material, including the material that is available from all other players, and you put it all together, you have a certain amount of things that you can use to prep for the exam, given you are a self-studying student. But please be smart and work hard, because however much I've seen a lot of, like, I've worked with a lot of self-study students who do the paper, and then, because of little things, little gaps of advices that they didn't get, they fail. And then, we work together and we address those issues. So try not to let those happen. That is why I made those videos, and that is why I do this session as well, because I'm hoping that the advices that you might not get, that I will be able to share with you. So you will be thinking, okay, now I know this. So now I know how to really do this. So you can walk into the exam with confidence and really face your paper well. And so hopefully pass. As you all know, my name is Azman, and I enjoy this process thoroughly. And I'm quite glad to have all of your support, and to be really engaging with you. If any of you haven't engaged with me, you can join my movement with respect to management education through LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. On that note, I think we have a wrap for today. Yes, you can keep in touch, and you can write to me. You can work with me if you're interested in any of the options. You can email to me, etc., etc. There is an open line of communication between me and the world, I suppose. On that front, I think we can wrap it up. Of course, you're almost you're most welcome, all of you. Very humbled to have this response. Thank you very much, all. Do well, pass the paper, become CIMA qualified, join the fraternity, move on with your life, and do greater things, do bigger things, do better things, be the best versions of what you can be. Be the best possible versions. Artist wishes from my end, always. So do make good use of everything that we discussed today. All the very best, and see you all around. Cheers. Thank you very much, and stay safe. Good luck.